All right, we are live here with our webinar today on starting a girls wrestling team. I have two special guests here. We have a third working on getting on this call, so hopefully we can get Doug on. But first we have Andrea Yamamoto. She's out of Richland, Washington. She's the assistant wrestling coach at Chiawana. Am I saying that right?
Yep, Chiawana High School. Yep.
Okay, Chiawana High School. She was 2015 girls cadet world team coach and 2016 schoolgirl Pan Am coach. She's also on the USA Wrestling Girls Sanctioning Resource Committee. And her personally, she was a 5-time world team member, 5th in the 1991 World Championships for Team USA. So, Andrea, welcome.
Thank you. You gave me 5th, but really it took 6th.
Oh, I even had that written down. I just wanted to give you, you know.
I'll take it.
And then we have Trent Kroll on the call here out of Hood River, Oregon. He's the Hood River Valley High School head wrestling coach. He wrestled for Pacific University for Mike Clock from 87 to 92. He was a 2007 USMC Excellence in Leadership Award recipient. He helped sanction girls wrestling in Oregon, been a part of state and national and international trips. Girls wrestling representative, was a Fargo coach for Oregon the past 2 years. And for the girls exhibition state championships in Oregon, he's had 29 finalists, or 29 all-state, 22 finalists, and 13 champs. Did I get that right, Trent?
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for being on this call. And then we have Doug Kretzer, who we're working on trying to get on here. He is out of Kansas, McPherson, and he's the boys and girls coach at McPherson High School. He has organized and run the girls championship tournament, and he is the person behind the Kansas proposal for girls state championships, which will be reviewed in June. And he's been involved in both folkstyle and freestyle for the girls on state and national level, which is a theme on this webinar today, because we have a lot of, you know, we have some different kind of dynamics with girls wrestling when girls continue on, when they wrestle freestyle season, when they decide to wrestle in college. But really today, we've had quite a few questions about the basics, the nitty gritty of starting a girls wrestling team. And, you know, some of the biggest questions we've had are how to get a lot of girls interested in the team, how to get them to join the team. We've had questions come in about, you know, they've started the team, but how do we get even more? So, Trent, if you would like to help us start off, you know, some of your suggestions, some of the things that you've run into that have worked really well for you, that has helped you enable more girls to join the wrestling team.
Yeah, thank you, Katherine. You know, this last year, we started the year with 15 girls and we ended with 13 girls. And I'd love to have 18 to 20 on the team. I think that our biggest, the thing that makes our team really work together is that they feel like a family in the room. We have the boys practicing on one side and the girls practicing on the other side at the same time. To help recruit, we have the girls bring in their friends and try it out. And, you know, I think that there's my mind's going everywhere right now, but I think some of the things that's really important is if you want girls to be in your room, then you have to really feel like it's important for girls to be in your room, and they have to feel like it's important to you for them to be in the room. So we put a board in our room that has champions for girls wrestling on it. We have a bulletin board out in the hallway in the middle of the school for girls wrestling and events that are going on. I have a relationship with the administration that allows me to say, hey, you know, every time we host a tournament, we're gonna have a girls tournament. We're gonna have girls brackets. We're gonna invite schools to come in that have girls on their team, and we're going to have a separate girls schedule. And once we did that for a couple of years, Now we're able to send buses to with girls only going to different events. And we have the benefit of being really close to Washington that has over 1,500 girls wrestling. You know, in Oregon, I think we were at 477 last year, and now it's become official. It's going to explode and hopefully be close to 900 in the next year. But so those four things really have really helped out. We put a board up in our room that made it important. They see that we really appreciate and value them. We put a board up in the hallway that champions girls wrestling. We asked the girls to bring their friends in to work out with them and try it out. We do a spring little 1-day camp for an hour. Hey, try it out. And that helped us bring in 3 more girls one time. And then also then we have a separate schedule for our girls. And really for us, that separate schedule has really helped with the injuries. And geez, we had probably 6 of our girls had almost 50 matches this last year, you know, and that's a whole nother topic of how many matches to wrestle every year. But it just ended up that that's what they were, because they were going into the consolation side of the bracket and getting extra matches, and all of those matches were against girls, and we didn't have any injuries, season-ending injuries, when we were wrestling girls against other girls. And that was really something that I went, okay, this is a good thing. And that's a great thing as parents are looking on and going, okay, I want my daughters to be a part of this program as well. So, Andrea, I'm sorry, I could keep going on, but I'll pass it off.
You know, actually, so Washington has had sanctioned wrestling, but at Chiawana, we've only had the very first girl to come out for the wrestling team, I think was in I want to say it was 2013. So this was a situation where we, you know, our state has had, we've enjoyed almost 12 years of girls sanctioned wrestling. Trent, you're right. Your numbers are gonna double now that you have that sanctioning and state championship. You guys are gonna grow, and it's gonna be really great to see all those new opportunities for girls growing in Oregon. But you know, I think our high school kind of went through what most do, which is the one girl turns out, and she's the only girl on the team. And a year later, we met, and you know, at the time, they were taking her to the JV boys events, and then being able to bring me on board and get her to the girls events, I think is what really, you know, that's just such a huge change. And obviously what Trent is saying with the injuries, and being able to cultivate excitement, the opportunity to compete against other girls, I think is obviously a huge factor. We did something similar. We started it last spring, where we have our competitive kind of freestyle and Greco club that starts, you know, right after the state high school championship. But I felt that we needed a space for girls to come and learn and try the sport in a way that, you know, wasn't super high training and wasn't super competitive in it, and just in a way to expose them to the sport. And we do, you know, maybe one day we're learning some technique, and maybe the next day we're in the weight room, and another day we might be out doing conditioning or talking about nutrition. So that was really beneficial to us last year. We pulled about 6 or 7 girls from that program then into our scholastic program in the winter. And what Trent said about bringing a friend, I think is so important. Sports are social activities for kids, but it's especially true for girls. So encouraging them to come with a partner and try it out together, I think makes such a huge difference. And what may start out as we're going to try this turns into we're going to make it, you know, they decide they're going to make it through the whole season. So I definitely agree about having them bring a friend and trying it out together.
I think that the fact that both of you guys kind of brought up like this element of giving them the opportunity to try. Most girls don't realize that it's something that they can actually do, or that it actually applies to them. You know, there's a lot of stereotypes about wrestling or what it looks like to be a wrestler. And I think that's really important that you guys are bringing that in. Trent, you had mentioned that you're doing separate schedules. Now, does that include both a separate schedule for practice as well as competition schedule, or how does that work?
Yeah. So I know that, you know, people will listen to this and they'll say, well, how do I can't separate two teams. I don't have the coaching staff. And, you know, I can only tell you what I was thinking the same thing. And I was like, okay, how are we going to do this? And because I do think that separating some of the technique that we do is important. You know, I think there's some things that we do, what we coach the guys, that is a waste of the time for the girls. And you know, people say wrestling's wrestling. I agree, but women's bodies are built differently than men's bodies. And, you know, maybe the strength that we have in the shoulders as males that the girls have a little bit different. And so the technique's a little bit different there. And so we separate some of our practice time as well. So what we did, I think that the root to your question is, how do we find somebody to do the separate coaching? And so what we did was I brought a dad in, and so I consider myself the head coach of both programs, the men's and the girls program. And before, you know, next year is actually the first year that there's going to be an official girls program, because in the state of Oregon, the girls have been in exhibition. And really what we've done with wrestling in the state of Oregon is what we asked the OSAA to do is to add girls wrestling as a separate division within the already existing sport of wrestling, so that we're not inventing a new sport. We just are adding a separate division. So I asked this dad to come in, and he's got a high school background wrestling, and he's great with the girls. And sometimes I go on events with the girls, and sometimes he goes on events with the girls, and I split my time up between the girls and the boys if there's an overlap. But I think that right now, that's one of the questions in Oregon is, well, do we have to separate practices like basketball does? You know, do we have to share the prime time right after school time? And with 10 to 12 girls on the team and 30 to 45 guys on the team, we haven't had to really split up practices yet. You know, I think maybe in 3 or 4 years, that would be a great challenge for us. Do we need to have practices in the mornings? I know that there's one school here in Oregon that's girls are wrestling in the mornings and lifting weights in the afternoons, and boys are lifting weights in the mornings and wrestling in the afternoons. Right now we've got everybody together. We splitting up practice a little bit, and it's just finding a way to find a volunteer to start it out. My plan right now, we've got 4 girls right now from Hood River Valley wrestling in colleges around the nation. And I want to get them back into this county and get them teaching and bring them back in and coaching. So I need to start getting into that school board room and start talking about, you know, all the great things that are happening in wrestling, and then eventually asking for another assistant coach that'll be running ideally another head coach. But I think that really what I'll be able to get is another assistant coach paid for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Andrea, do you have anything to?
Yeah, you know, we went from 1 girl to 23 girls in the 4 years that I've had the opportunity to coach at Tijuana. And as we've grown, you know, that very first girl, you know, her training partners were the boys. And so there was no change or anything there. Then the following year I had 2 girls, and I pulled them aside. I want to say starting January. We got to January and I realized, okay, and just like what Trent was saying, these girls were in such a completely different place with their skills that the varsity program was not going to be very conducive for them. And so I just pulled them aside and we just kind of worked on a more compressed sort of curriculum that would work for them. And then as we've continued to grow, Chiawana had 103 kids total on the roster this year. And thank goodness we actually have a wrestling room that can accommodate that number of kids. So as we grew to 23 this last season, depending on the girl, maybe her best workout partner is over with the C team boys. It all just kind of depends on the kid. For the most part, I try to keep the girls together. But there was a couple situations where her best partner, maybe that day or that week, was a kid on C team boys or a boy on the JV boy team. So I have been working to having the girls all train together with some flexibility so that, if we have an individual that just needs something a little different and we have a partner for her that happens to be on the boys' side, we're leaving some room open for that flexibility. But what I witnessed, though, is that the girls really want to train together. And that really makes sense, especially if, we were talking earlier about you came in with your friend. This is my partner every day, right? I think as you're growing your girls program, just have some flexibility as you go along, and just realize that as your numbers continue to grow or compress. I was talking to a really successful coach here in Washington State, and they've had girls on their teams for 10 years, and their numbers have grown and then their numbers have compressed, and, for a variety of reasons. So just kind of being willing to be flexible as you go through the process of building your girls team. But I love what Trent said about bringing a dad in. There have been some other schools in the Tri-Cities that have asked me, do you know of another female that could come in and help coach with us? And, there's just a handful of us in the Tri-Cities, and we're already, attached to a school. And so I have suggested there are some phenomenal wrestling moms and wrestling dads out there. Maybe their kids have already gone through the process and they've graduated, but they are safe people to have your children with. They have the right mindset, for your children to be around. They know wrestling, and the day-to-day operations of the practice can be taken care of, by the head coach at the time. Getting those girls, as Trent said, trying to get those girls to those all-girls events can put a strain on your coaching staff if you don't have those individuals. So I really love what he said, and I completely agree. Look outside the box sometimes for people to bring in and support your girls program, whether it is the practice room or whether it's just I can train them during the week, but I just need that individual that is safe and a good leader and knows wrestling well enough to be able to support the girls at the tournament.
Yeah, that's great. You guys are really hitting like all the questions kind of that people have been asking. I kind of want to read one's from Matt Burney, and he asked specifically, where is the best place to find a female coach? He has a co-ed team now, but we don't have enough girls or coaches to send separate girls to tournaments, right? So we're talking about how important it is to get these girls to the girl-specific tournaments, but if you don't have that person, and I think I've experienced the same thing. It's a parent that comes in, and so he was talking about with the female coach, so you can send the girls to the girls tournament and boost that participation. So it's like as soon as you get that person to help support the girls team, it kind of snowballs. And I'm sure a lot of coaches feel like their hands are tied. They want to be able to help support a girls team, but they don't either. Maybe they haven't realized they can reach out to people, or they're just having a hard time finding that person that would help support that team. So do you guys have any strategies on, kind of how you find that person, or, anything else on the subject of, you're dealing with two teams that you're kind of managing?
Well, we've had girls on the team since 2008, and I got here in 2006, so I guess it's been since 2006. But the first official exhibition championship was in 2008, And so we've had some girls come back, and it's not, for me, it's not just let's find a female to coach the females team, because we also want to find somebody who has the same philosophy and that has some experience in coaching girls sports. It's kind of weird, this little phenomenon. I don't know, Andrea, if you've experienced it either, but some of the girls that made it through the guys program as that one girl in the program, when they come back and they coach girls, they're not very empathetic to the girls wrestling, only the girls. And hey, I got to take a timeout to get my hair tie on, or we're gonna take 10 minutes to put our shoes on and do some stuff. That's just a difference of coaching girls than coaching guys. And so I'm really working hard at right now finding somebody who, or training somebody who can learn to be a great girls coach and not just a wrestling coach as well. So that's kind of a weird little thing that I've found, that as I was just trying to go out there and find a wrestling coach, I needed to find a wrestling coach that was a girls coach as well.
Yeah, I am very familiar with the phenomenon of this one girl at Tijuana, and she finished college and came back in, and man, she didn't and part of that is that we're talking about these girls that have just finished their careers, whether they finished their career in high school or they just finished it in college. These are hot, competitive girls. And
Absolutely.
If they were the one girl that came through, where, man, she had to bring it every single day, whether she felt she had to continue proving herself or not. So, yeah, I think there's some training and development that needs to take place there. And often they're just a little young, they've been so focused on themselves. They switching gears into coaching, is really different. And that takes time for sure. And so cultivating some leadership skills and a philosophy. At the end of the day, when we're talking about our scholastic programs, we are talking about students. These are students in a school, a place of learning. And not every student that comes from chemistry class directly into your wrestling room is ready to be hardcore or has that same drive and motivation as maybe the one girl that came through. And so even I have to remember that, sometimes. But yeah, some places that we can look. Okay, we talked about the moms and dads. We could potentially bring them in. We should talk to if your club is not right out of your school, maybe talk to the club that's closest and see if there's an opportunity for coaching there. And here's one more outside of the box. And I don't really know. I've not had to try this myself, but I have heard of other people that have never wrestled a day in their life, but they're great leaders of kids. They learn sports. I mean, there could be another women's coach at your school coaching another sport that if you brought them in, and you're, as a head coach, you're willing to take the time to mentor and teach the sport alongside them. That could be another person that you bring in. I think you'd have to be in for the long haul. That couldn't be just a season. That relationship would need to exist for several years. Yeah, I think if you can get some of these former athletes to return to your program and put them through some leadership training and get them to realize that, them going through the hard way was to pave the way so that, girls don't have to do that. And we want the student that comes from chemistry class to come into wrestling, and we want them to learn. We want them to learn to love the sport. We want to give them an opportunity to participate and an opportunity to compete. If we can kind of stick with those philosophies, I think we'll be okay.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it doesn't always have to be that, you're finding the next Olympic champion. That's sometimes the issue that I think we run into with girls wrestling, because from my experience, I think coaches love to come tell me how they have this one tough girl. Like that's the most exciting thing. And I'm kind of like, well, that's great. But how many girls do you have in general? You know, like it's great that you have one tough girl and that's the girl that's convinced you that girls wrestling is great. But, you know, how are you working to bring in more girls to the, you know, to the sport? That's the most important thing. That's what we're looking to do. And I know I always had a really hard time trying to get girls on my team, and now realize, like from being a high schooler, now being an adult, you know, some of the strategies I could have employed. I think, you know, just kind of like thinking back what you guys said, I think having something visual where, you know, you have an assembly style, or you give people, you know, girls an opportunity to just like come in and try, where it's like really non-threatening. That's a big deal, you know, because it's been something that's been so off limits for so long. But I wanted to bring up another question. A lot of people, their questions really kind of like carry over each other. So we're kind of, you know, I'm going to kind of like let the conversation lead because it's going really well. So Steven Moreno is asking about coaching dynamics, which we've touched on a little bit. So basically like needs for a girls team versus a boys team. And this has led into them, you know, also being concerned about if they separate the practice, will the girls get as much out of the practice, you know, and Andrew, you kind of touched on that about needing to be flexible. If there's a partner that one girl needs, you know, that's a male partner, okay, you know, go with that. And if the rest of the girls want to just practice with each other, that's great. And I agree with that. I kind of grew up in that setting as well. I had female partners that I wrestled with, and then sometimes there were male partners that I wrestled with. So kind of your experience in the needs of girls team versus boys team, and that worry, you know, there's a big worry, I think, because this has been asked more than once, that as soon as they only start practicing against girls, that they just won't gain as much.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the last part of that, Katherine?
Yeah. So the concern that if they start only practicing with the girls, like the need is to separate, you know, a boys and girls team, are the girls going to lose out because they're not practicing against the boys? It's, you know, that assumption that you're tougher only if you wrestle against boys.
Yeah. Go ahead, Trent.
So parents are always asking me, especially the parents of the girl who's coming up, who was an 8th grade state champion, you know, oh, does she have to wrestle girls in your program? And of course my answer, you know, in practice, I don't care who they're wrestling with, who they're practicing with. And so, and you know, I think, sure, if you're wrestling against boys all the time, or you're wrestling against a national champion girl all the time, are you going to get better? More than likely. And so, you know, what we want to do is we want to be healthy at the end of the season. And so following that path to make sure that happens. I think that there's also a lot of value to high school boys having the opportunity to touch females in a way that's not sexual, and learning that that's an okay thing. And I think that it's another great part of having girls in the room, with some of the education that the boys get in that. One of the things that we did this year that actually relates exactly to your question is we separated practices in that we practiced from 3:30 to 5:30 every day. I didn't separate in as far as having people in the morning or after 5:30. But my assistant coaches came to me and they said, hey, we got 47 kids on the mat. You know, we don't have a room like Chiawana, and everybody's running into each other. We've got kids who can barely tie their shoes, and we've got a kid who's a 2-time state champion, and we're teaching them all the same things. Can we separate? And I was like, well, you know, we need to take advantage of mat time. And and so they talked me into changing this year. So we spent 40 minutes in the weight room. Each group had 40 minutes in the weight room during our 3:30 to 5:30 block. And each group had 40 minutes of instruction with in drilling with that instruction, and then 40 minutes of either groups where I don't want to say we're going live, but we're going live with situational drilling, and then games and conditioning at the end. We split that up. We had such a big JV and C team group that was one group, and then our girls and our varsity actually was the other half of the group. So we should have had 3 groups, but we only had 2 groups really. So we had where the first 40 minutes, the C team and the B team went up and lifted weights, and the girls and the varsity were doing drilling and learning technique, and then they switched, and then at the end everybody was back together for the live and the conditioning. And it worked out really well this year. During that 40 minutes with the girls over on the side and the varsity, you know, there was a lot of the same things that we were working on, but it was just at a slower rate. Before maybe some of the newer girls, we also had, you know, 3 girls that were in the finals last year too, but they were, you know, we're working on refining everything that we do. So we definitely had a coach working with them separately all the time, and it was that dad, and I'm walking around the room, and I got another coach over there. So having some volunteer coaches in the room, having the body up in the weight room that kept everybody on task, and that was really important, was me getting some people in the room, asking people to volunteer, and being okay that I was asking them to volunteer for no money to be there every day. And it's worked out well before maybe the last 5 years. I never asked people. I waited for them to come to me, and now I'm going out and asking them. And it's working for me to get 10 coaches in the room every practice. So.
Yeah. What's the original question?
Well, you know, we can kind of go between like your own strategies, you know, like that Trent went into detail about that. Well, Andrea, why don't you talk about just like the coaching dynamics that you've seen? You like basically, do you need to treat male or female wrestlers differently? And especially, you know, do you feel like any of your girls, because you have a separate practice, right, for your girls?
No, so we do a 6 a.m. strength and conditioning, and that's everyone. And then, you know, again, because we're, you know, we have plenty of mat space, we have a C team, a JV boys team, and then we have a boys varsity, and then we have girls, and we have 1 to 2 coaches. We have I'm the assistant coach for girls. We have an assistant coach for the C team, 1 for JV, and then 2 for varsity. And then we have some other kind of light assistants, volunteers that come in and kind of float between all of them. And so we actually have our sections in the room. And again, we can do that because we have the space. So we could be the anomaly, you know, compared to most rooms. As far as, you know, coaching girls and boys, you know, I think what's important to understand specifically about girls is they want all the same physical things. They want the strength and conditioning. They want the technique. They want the conditioning. They want those physical things to be equal. They want to know that they're being pushed and challenged in the sport of wrestling, just like their male counterparts. That is very important to them. How we communicate, push, challenge, I think with girls is where the differences in boys and girls lie. But I don't think that coaches should, you know, fear those challenges. There's such great material out there about coaching girls. And there's so many great coaches that have coached girls in all sports that have put out great blogs and books and things that people can use as resources. And as, you know, you maybe go from the 1 girl to 5 girls to 10 to 12, you know, girls have no problem telling you, you know, what they're feeling or what works for them or what doesn't. Making yourself available to listen And just look for usually ways to change it's usually just a communication. And that communication is both how we communicate verbally and how we're listening to these kids. And just remembering that treating them as people, not performers, goes a long way. Trying to get to know the person as much as you possibly can, their interests outside of school, things like that. But as far as the actual, the physical side of things, I think I read a study that they did on girls, and one of the complaints from girls, and this was across various sports, it wasn't just one sport, was that they didn't feel they got pushed or challenged physically as hard as their male counterparts. So I think the girls are saying loud and clear, we want our training to be the same. We want those things to be the same, but we do have different needs in terms of, as Trent and I have been talking about. I don't know about Trent, you had a program since 2008. We've only been kind of working at this since 2014. And I have had generation after generation of first-time wrestlers. So I'm not seeing the girl who's been wrestling since she's been 7. I have been, and our coaching staff has been coaching and teaching first-year beginner girls. That's a game changer, in and of itself. So, again, this is where being flexible, listening to your athletes, creating a space where you can have good communication with them. I know our girls, like my shirt says Chihuahua Girls. When it came to make gear, I was going to put Lady Riverhawks because Riverhawks is our mascot. And man, they got hot about that. They didn't want to be Lady Riverhawks. I had to change it but this was important to them, and it didn't seem like a big deal to me, but this was a big deal to them. So this was an area where I could hear them, and we could change it. We can give them something that's specific to them, and giving them as much space to help guide the program, a little bit, I think makes a big difference.
And I think you bring up a really good point about not feeling like they've been pushed enough. One of the questions, Mike from the Wrestling Insider is asking questions about, do you teach technique differently? Do you steer away from upper body? Do you focus on lower body? Kind of like, where do you go? And, my answer to that is never, never steer away from anything, because as much as, we do discuss, okay, so, body types are different, but it's different amongst the genders and then amongst men and women, boys and girls themselves, right? You're going to have male wrestlers who, could never lift their opponent ever, but they've got the speed that, so they're all about low shots. And then you have the female wrestler who, can't always, get their shots in, but they can throw anybody, right? So it's still, makes sense wrestler to wrestler. So you never exclude any technique for any wrestler just because you think, oh, girls don't lift as often. No, I would say girls haven't been given as many opportunities to be taught how to, to lift or that next level of technique, because you've got like you said, so many new wrestlers starting high school level. So they haven't had the time to learn all this technique to where they're, throwing people in the air. But we see there's plenty of girls, and especially now that Greco is starting to become a little bit more of a thing, a few more tournaments. I mean, these girls are launching each other, they're figuring it out. So what have you guys seen in terms of technique or teaching differently? Like, what's your opinion on that whole strength factor, technique factor? Where's your kind of your mantra coaching girls?
Boy, I think that we really we do a lot of changing with our technique. And, going back to the last question real quick, as a guy who never coached women for 20 years before, it's been a fun, kind of revitalized my energy in coaching. I'm learning how to talk to women and coach them and motivate them and push them. And Andrew reminded me that a couple years ago, somebody told me that, and this is me talking to the guys that are listening to this, that when I yell, "You guys really got to push harder," that my guys who are, you know, jogging and around the circle, they take their chin down and they dig harder, and the girls are thinking to themselves, "He's talking to me," and so that just talking to them and finding ways to motivate them a little bit differently than I motivate my guys sometimes. And of course, every girl is different, but it kind of opened my eyes to coaching girls a little bit different, was the way that I was talking to them. And so then we started looking at the technique, that what was going to, with brand new girls on our team, how are we going to beat other brand new girls, and what could we do to have a high learning curve. And we started looking at where we were having problems, and we were having problems getting off the mat in folk style. So stand-ups were really hard. Once our head was on the mat, we couldn't pick our head back up off the mat. And so immediately we thought, okay, offensively, we need to keep their head on the mat. So we, from the top position, our main goal, you know, a lot of coaches are working on the hips. We're working on the head. We want to keep their head on the mat. And then we're going to a power half, or we're coming out and hitting a cement mixer. But if we can keep their head on the mat for the beginning level girls, we're gonna pin you right away. We don't do a lot of chicken wings, arm bars with our girls as well. A lot of that was because of the flexibility in shoulders. And so we'd spend hours and hours and hours of time in practice room on our chicken wings, and we go to run one and the girls would just go right out of it. And so, you know, maybe we get 2 out of 10. And so what was something that we could do to take away that flexibility? And we started going to a power half with a half Nelson, and we're running around the head. And so I think I picked that up from Washington because they were beating us with it. As far as what we do from the bottom, you know, it was hard for us to get our head up on the stand up. And so we started going to a 4-point stance and circling out of it, and then coming to our feet with an underhook. This year we went up into Washington, and actually Washington, I went up to there and the girls are doing that. And I'm like, hey, we're going to keep following what Washington's doing because they're ahead of us. And now this year, Washington beat us with stand-ups, and they're working on getting their stand-ups. They're in the weight room, and they're faster on their stand-ups. And so I'm like, okay, we're going back to the stand-ups, and we're going to make it work this year. But those are a couple of things, you know, on our feet with our brand new girls. We're staying away from getting both knees on the mat because it's so hard to get back up with having somebody who hasn't been in the weight room their whole entire life and trying out sports for the first time maybe. And so we're working some arm spins. We're working some stuff in the head and just going around behind stuff. And that's for the beginners that are coming into our room. But Andrew, what do you guys do differently?
Well, you know, again, it's been an evolution. The first year I was there, the one girl, she'd already had one season under her belt. She took it upon herself to do freestyle. She went to Fargo. So she, you know, when she came back in the second year, she could hold pace with what the varsity curriculum was. As I got those 2 girls and I pulled them aside once I realized they just can't keep up with this. You know, we picked, like, these are the 5 things you're going to do, and you're going to do these 5 things really well. And, you know, and such a fear of shooting as a beginner. Well, we can become really good counter offense wrestlers, or we can learn when people start pushing and coming at us, we can snap them down. Same thing, snap down, go behinds. I had one girl that I swear she made it to state, this one of these 2 girls. She would snap them down, go behind. I don't think she took a shot the whole season. Snap down, go behind. Spiral break down to a leg in, and then pin them. We worked a lot on headlock defense. And then I think there was 1 or 2 other things, and that we just worked that and worked that and worked that. Counter offense was a big deal for her because she just didn't have the confidence in shooting yet. Had I had her for a couple more seasons, we could have worked that out. But it's like, okay, well, then we're going to get them coming and we're going to go ahead and score. Trying to keep the technique for those beginners just manageable for them. If you're not the most athletic kid, coming in, wrestling is like learning a foreign language and going to a foreign land. We have all these different, it takes the kid the whole year to understand what we mean by just position. There's so much that we all in wrestling know that they have to try to consume, and beginners, it's hard to take it all in fast. So I think being able, if you have the ability in your program to have a little group over here that they're just working this small repertoire of technique over and over, and they get a little confidence in them, and then you can start adding some more layers. I think that's, obviously the ideal way to go. Katherine, I think as far as like teaching technique, girls and boys, and, maybe if I'm a male coach and I've never coached girls before, one thing that I've heard a lot is, maybe just a little discomfort about, maybe showing moves on a girl before it. And I've talked with a lot of male coaches, just like you said, Katherine, they want to coach girls. But they've been in a male model and male coaching kind of world. And that comes with a certain way of talking and doing and language. And some of them don't necessarily feel comfortable showing technique on girls. And I feel like, number one, don't do anything you're not comfortable doing, right? Just right off the bat, if you're not comfortable doing something yet, don't do it. But there's ways to work around that. I think one way to work around that is if you have two more experienced wrestlers, to bring them over, they can show the technique. Or you can verbally walk them through things until you start to get comfortable showing technique on girls, or putting your hands on them to show them, move your hand like this, do that. But at the end of the day, those girls want to learn. They're not as concerned about it as you are. I know that as a male coach in in this leadership position, it can, perhaps make them feel uncomfortable to start. Give everyone some patience. Use other modalities to teach until you get comfortable, and then I think you'll be on your way.
Trent, do you have anything to, kind of add on that last little part Andrea talking about?
It's so unclear sometimes when somebody says, so-and-so touched me inappropriately, that I tell my coaches, I say, the person that I show moves on is the girl whose dad is the assistant coach, or the kid who's been in the program for 4 years and I know their parents, and everybody's trusting everybody. And so I tell my brand new 22-year-old volunteer coaches that, hey, I want you to build some trust before we're in there showing moves on all the girls. And I don't want to put them in a situation where they're getting accused of something that was just wrestling, until maybe the girls are a little bit more aware of what happens in wrestling and the touching that happens in wrestling. And so I just tell my coaches, and it's different, I guess, than what Andrea was just saying, but I tell my coaches that they don't need to show moves on the girls, and just grab another guy. And and the person that I show moves on is the person whose dad is in the room. And, we have cameras in our room, which is a good thing, because if something happened, then we have cameras, but it's just a security thing for the school. But it's just the world's so crazy out there right now that I don't want to put my coaches in a situation that's a bad situation. And so, but it's never become a problem. we show moves. We, you know, if I gotta show a single leg, I'll bring a guy over and show a single leg. And the girls, if they want to say, "Hey, coach, is this how you do it?" and they come over and they want to show me on me, then that's great. But if I want to show a move on somebody whose dad isn't in the room, I guess I would say, "Hey, can I show a move on you real quick?" And I'd ask them or something like that. But that's kind of where I am right now in this world of people accusing people and not knowing what's going to happen. So
I think this is an area where coaches education because we do have so many male coaches in our scholastic programs and our clubs, this is going to be an area where some education on, you know, coaching girls, I think is gonna become valuable. Hopefully LuchaFIT will jump in on some of that. I think that we do. I think we have a responsibility to make sure that our male coaches feel educated, that they have tools, that they feel safe, that their program is safe. You know, we talk about safety of our program. We're talking about everyone involved, and so. You know, I think, and Trent is hitting on just straightforward communication. Is it okay if I do this? Building some trust, things like that. I think that's really important. People should feel comfortable coaching these kids, and if they have to use different modalities to get there, then, you know, I think that's fine.
I think that comes back to like building that team and that core group dynamic and you know, learning everyone's comfort level. And so I want to bring it back to kind of some of like the basics. And I want to hear, Andrea, first about some of your biggest challenges with starting either girls tournament, like girls only tournaments and girls only teams. Kind of what's been the dynamic like, and what's some of those challenges that come, and kind of how do you address them?
Well, Chiawana, we have not had our first girls tournament yet. I'm hoping that will be in our future. But I do know what it is like to start a first all girls tournament here in Washington State. We did that through our USA Washington, USA Wrestling Washington program. And, you know, it took a little, we had to take maybe the long route to get there. We actually hosted like a national tournament series, War of the Roses. We brought them in. And the reason that I did that was, you know, USA Wrestling Washington we had plenty of tournaments, and we had divisions for girls, but girls were not going to those freestyle, Greco, folkstyle tournaments. And I really felt that we needed a place for all ages, all girls to be able to come together and compete. And, you know, there wasn't like overwhelming support at the time. And I thought, okay, well, you know, maybe we'll just, you know, do something outside of USA Wrestling Washington. And we brought in War of the Roses, and we had the largest War of the Roses that the late Brent Harvey had up to that point. We had almost 200 girls from all over show up. And so a couple things were realized at that moment. Is number one, yes, an all ages, all girls tournament is a good idea and is viable, and this is the right direction. And then the second piece of it was how can we make this work within our USA Wrestling Washington organization? Because I really believed that is where it belonged, and how can we mold and fit that into their existing structure. And so due to great local leadership and leadership, you know, at USA Wrestling, you know, kind of coming together, you know, we figured out a way to make it work. And we've had since the War Roses, we started our first, you know, USA Wrestling Washington Women's Columbia Cup all ages, all girls tournament. This was our third year this year, very successful. We were one of the first to add Greco, and the girls loved it. And so the Greco division continues to climb, and all, you know, whether it's Women's Columbia Cup or any other all girls tournament, just get the tournament started. get it started. The first one can be a little rough, getting the word out, things like that. But if you get the one started and the girls find out about it and the coaches find out about it and the parents and everybody, they'll keep coming. As far as challenges for starting a girls program, I think, again, we're talking about a school. We're talking about students. We have some that are super, super competitive, and this is one place where they are really striving and pushing hard. They want to be state champions, and those same kids might be the kids that are pushing to be Fargo All-Americans, or they are pushing to make Team USA. So, hopefully we all have the opportunity to have those kinds of kids and to provide a space for them. The rest of the kids, we've got some on the bubble, and they might be those varsity kids or they may not, and being able to create a space for them. I think we have to make wrestling fun. Recruiting and keeping kids in our sport is tough. This is a hard sport. And it's not getting easier. Kids are getting more athletic. Kids have more opportunities to learn. Kids have more distractions right now. So we have to, as Trent said, create a family, and we have to continue to find ways to make it fun. And, that's tough during the scholastic season. We're just go, 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 go. We've got dual meets. We've got stuff going on the weekend. It's sometimes, I think, as coaches, we forget, go ahead and take the 15 or 20 minutes to do something fun, or do 10 or 15 minutes to do some team building. Or honestly, just ask the kids how their day are going and connect with them in a way that's not wrestling. And then obviously all the things that you can do, in the off season, summer, campouts, going on, the two Tijuana girls, along with some other Tri-City girls, we're going to go to our very first, technique and training camp. And that's a really big deal for us to be able to do something outside where the girls can learn. They're going to travel together. And, we all know that when they're not training, these other spaces that we create for them to socialize is a really big deal. So trying to create as many social opportunities away from the mat and away from the training, I think are great ways to help keep kids interested and retain them. And I'll let Trent finish that up, because he's been a long time coach and had to see the waves up and down of getting kids and keeping kids and building a strong program.
Yeah, just this last weekend we had a team barbecue, and so right now we're trying to do a fun social gathering once a month outside of the scholastic season. And next month we have there'll be a barbecue at my house, and then we'll have a team hike, and then we have a night scheduled in July for bowling. And I used to be worried about getting everybody there, and I'd get upset because people didn't show up. And now I'm just like, okay, it's an opportunity for the family to get together. And if you want to be there and you can be there, great. And if you need a ride, we'll help problem solve that. But, and that philosophy in my head has just made it a lot better and made it fun. We have 45 kids in our program right now, maybe 50. And you add their parents, that's 100 people. Well, we had a little over 40 people at the barbecue, but it was just a fun night and a phenomenal night. I posted a picture on social media, and everybody who wasn't there is talking about it. And so that's kind of a fun way to do that. I'll answer your question about the tournaments. We've run a girls tournament. Right now, when I'm scheduling my tournaments, I'm really looking for other tournaments that are quality, that also have, for my guys, that also have a girls tournament, and not just groups of 4 girls tournaments. I want a tournament that's a bracketed tournament alongside the girls tournament or the boys tournament. I'm also creating a dual meet schedule. And so we have the girls under the lights. And, you know, that's a challenge with basketball practices and basketball competitions. And how do we fit that into the schedule? I have 5 home guys dual meets a year. And right now I got 4 girls home dual meets a year. And the basketball coaches are not happy. And so how do I get that? I got them on different nights, and they really want them to be like 5 o'clock girls dual meet, 7 o'clock boys dual meet, and you know we'll figure it out and make that happen. But what we've done with our tournament, our home tournament, we have a big home tournament. We used to have 16 teams. I got it down to like 12 teams now, and our boys weigh in at 8 a.m., wrestle at 10 a.m. Our girls weigh in at 10 a.m., wrestle at 12 p.m. We had about 120 girls in the tournament and 5 mats. As the 45-minute rule started happening with the guys, it filled up the mats all the way through till about 6 p.m. Both tournaments are done about 6 p.m. You know, it's not 4:30 p.m., but it's 6 p.m. and we got another 120 girls wrestling. We put them in bracketed tournaments on track wrestling, and it's worked out really well for us. I started doing some of the, you know, we run a kids USA tournament as well, and I wanted to run girls brackets on there, but the numbers just didn't come with the girls coming, and so that didn't really happen until we got to the middle school level. And then I ended up going, okay, hey, there's no middle school state championship for girls in in Oregon. So for the last 3 years, I hosted the girls middle school state championship in Oregon. Now the boys middle school state championship is going to host that girls state championship, and they're going to put it in brackets, and it's going to be great. There's going to be qualifiers. So it's really just making a commitment to having an opportunity for those girls that are coming to put them into a bracket and compete and just having the type of competition that those girls want. And so for us, they want me to separate my girls tournament and my guys tournament to a different weekend. And I think that stretches my coaches too thin. And so I'm going to keep it together. And eventually there's going to be 200 girls there, 250 girls, and we're going to be there till 8:30 at night one year. And then I'm going to have to really think about separating that tournament. But right now it works well for us, starting the girls at noon and the boys at 10 for the high school tournament.
Right. It sounds like the challenges of when do you separate, how long do you keep running a tournament together? And it sounds like a lot of that kind of evolves with time and evolves with your numbers. But as long as you're providing the opportunity, as Andrea said, as long as you're just starting the tournament, which sometimes can be the hardest thing in itself, just convincing the people around you to help you, support you, make this tournament happen. But it's kind of like, once you build it, they'll come, right? So if you guys have anything else you'd like to add here, let's see, I've got a question about, when anything you want to add about like when a coach just has just very few numbers and just how to get the support around a tournament, kind of just how do you even start when those numbers are so low? Like, what is it that you've done that has kind of given you the motivation? Or,
I kind of touched on the administration part of it, and getting people to buy into adding and change. And so, I suggest going baby steps. Hey, Mr. Athletic Director, we're looking at, maybe having 2 to 5 girls on the team this year. We'd like to look at having a schedule where we're taking our girls to separate meets. And if the meets that we're going to don't have girls, can I take a a minibus or a van, district van, and take the girls to another tournament over there. Because for us, you know, in Oregon, we have 14 dates and 50 match limit. And so because girls wrestling is now its own separate division, I get 14 dates just for those girls. And so I can take them to different events. Before that, if your state doesn't have girls as a separate division, I considered my girls as either a B team or a C team. And so I included their competitions into those dates. So I had 14 dates for my varsity, 14 dates for my B team, and 14 dates for my C team. But I just, you know, hey, we're hosting a tournament. Send an email out to all the teams that are coming and say, hey, bring your girls and let's do groups of 4 with those girls or groups of 3 with those girls and get it started. And then if you're getting more and more girls on your team, start to talk to the other coaches that have more and more girls on their team and find out where they go. You know, we go to a tournament up by Andrea's place. We go to Hanford tournament because I met that coach one day, Dom Duncan, and I said, hey, I want to go up there and I want to compete against you guys. And he's like, come on up. And so we take a bus 2 hours up to right next door to Chiawana every year. So I just say take baby steps. Don't dive in and say to your administration, your athletic director, hey, we want to do dual meets. We want to do a girls tournament. We want to have a girls schedule. Just start out small and then start adding to it little by little by little. Like for me, I don't think anybody even knows that girls wrestling wasn't an official sport at Hood River Valley for the last 8 years. They had no idea. They thought that girls wrestling was an official sport because that's the way I treated it. And so, or a separate division. And so just continue to talk about it as something that's normal and communicate with your basketball coaches and say, hey, how late do you guys practice? You know, maybe they can practice till 6:15 and you can get a mat out there on the gym floor at 7. Little things like that. How can you, and you invite somebody over to have 8 matches with the dual meet. You know, one of the things that we're doing, I haven't even talked about this, is we proposed to the OSA that we have 14 tournament weight classes for girls. And we're actually asked, Andrea, I think this is the first time I've told you this.
Oh, okay.
We proposed to have the Washington weight classes for girls. And so we'd be doing the same exact weight classes. But then we proposed that we have 8 weight classes for dual meets. And so there's no rule that says that if you have a dual meet, you can't consider whatever weight classes you want. And so just communicate with that coach and find fun ways to build the program within your school and make it champion it really as something that's really exciting.
Andrea, last thoughts. Wrap us up.
One girl can become 23 girls, can become 30 girls. Coaching 1, coaching 4, coaching 20 is all different. You know, when I first started out, I'm like, I want this big team. Coaching a bigger team comes with different challenges, but the kids are worth it. And if you only have 4, there's something so special and wonderful about just coaching those, 4 girls. You become very close. Your road trips, all of that becomes very special. So no matter where your program is, they're great kids. They want to learn. And I think Trent really said it best. It is just baby steps. Just keep growing. Just keep trying, but just do something. Get that one mat down, call the people and the other coaches and see if they have girls. Just get the process started. If you get the process started and you bring other people into the space to work on it together, you will be growing it together. And before you know it, you'll start seeing more girls come in. But it is a process. You have to be patient, but it's really worth it. Coaching those girls is a very, very satisfying and valuable and rewarding experience.
Great. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this It's unfortunate we couldn't get Doug Kretzer on. We'll have to do something again another time with Doug. But thank you guys again so much for your time and for all your input. You guys are really the experts on this. And the only way we kind of learn and grow is, you know, from hearing each other's ideas. So thank you guys so much. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Katherine,
for Katherine. Thanks, Trent.
Having this idea. It's great.
Absolutely. All right. Have a good night.